You know, just a month ago, the Huskers had only 7 commits. And within just a month, they now have 17. And we're coming up on the end of June, right before the dead period, and to the probably the biggest recruiting weekend since that March 25th weekend. So let's get in to see who's coming this weekend, what kind of chances we have. And at the end, I'm also going to give you a surprise commits that just happened today, which to me is a big deal. I know a lot of people stating it's not, but to me it is. What's the Huskers' chances of getting these players? And some of these players that are coming have already committed. And if someone is not ranked, does not mean they feel like they're a bad player or not a good enough player to get ranked. A lot of time these players don't get ranked because these sites or these places haven't seen them yet or haven't had any film on them yet, or maybe they're at a smaller school where they haven't seen them play. And a lot of times you'll see, and I'll talk about this later on a couple of guys that people are talking about, don't think they're very good, but you got to understand where they go to school at means a lot. If you go to school in California or Texas or Florida and you do well, you're more likely to get that 4 or 5 star status than you are if you go to Colorado, Nebraska, Iowa, Kansas, somewhere around there. They just don't respect the football play as much as they do in them other states, and rightfully so. Some of your best players are from them states, but that doesn't take away you can't get top quality players from any of these other states. It's just hard for them to analyze and evaluate these players when they're going against lesser competition, where in California and Texas and Florida, a lot of them players are going against some other top level players, so it's a little easier to rate them players. But there's no guarantee on any of them. Keep in mind, this star rating, this is someone's opinion. Doesn't mean it's set in stone. Just because someone's considered a 5 star doesn't mean they're a 5 star or even a 3 star. I've seen plenty of 2 stars or no one even having a star was kind of overlooked, and by the end of their career they were one of the dominating players in college football and went in the top 10 of the NFL draft. So take this with a grain of salt. They're getting a lot better at them, and obviously if you see the 4 sites, all of them putting them as a 5-star recruit, probably most likely they are, just something happens, injury or a flop or something. It's rare for that to happen, but it can happen. You got to understand, Rhule and his staff has certain attributes they're looking for. They have their own rating system. And obviously, if you're a 5-star player, most likely you're a pretty good player, a real good, probably at least a 4-star for sure. And it doesn't take much, how I put, evaluating to see if these player or if that player is going to be what they expect. You start getting into the lower 4s, the 3s and below, then it's almost a crapshoot. So they have their own rating system and things they're looking for specifically, because the one thing Rhule and his staff has had to do since he's been coaching in the college ranks is he hasn't been at that elite school. Nebraska is probably the most elite school he's been to. So he wasn't never getting them top 4 and 5-star players. So he had to find them diamonds in the rough and evaluate and develop them players. And he did a great job there at Temple and a great job at Baylor. He made them 2 programs, winning programs, when they were not winning programs ever before. That's saying a lot. So I do think Rhule knows what he's doing. He has a way of doing it. I think we just need to give him some time. The next one is Quinn Clark. He is a wide receiver, a tall wide receiver out of Montana. He is the #1 player in Montana. Now, he's only ranked by 247 as a 3-star. On 3, ESPN and Rivals have not ranked him. Again, it's more likely they haven't seen enough on this young man, haven't evaluated this young man. They haven't seen any film on him, so they have not put a ranking on him. But he's a tall receiver. He's 6'6", 190 pounds. He's definitely one that could build up into, he could even build up into a tight end or end up playing on the wide receiver. One thing you got to know about Matt Rhule, just because they come in as a wide receiver, as a cornerback, or whatever, doesn't mean that's where they'll play, doesn't mean they'll stay. Matt Rhule is great at finding the best spot for these players that will get the most out of them. So you never know what he's going to play. I could see him playing tight end or even linebacker. Quinn is one of those that came to one of Rhule's camps during that week in June, and he really stuck out. Rhule really liked what he saw there and offered the young man right there on the spot. And Quinn really enjoyed his visit there, or his workout at the camp. He said he learned a lot, and he just raved about the hospitality Nebraska showed him. Rhule, about halfway through the camp, came up and pulled Clark aside and ran him through some tight end and linebacker drills. And that was new to him. He said he ain't never done that before, but he said it taught him a lot. It said it taught him a lot even for the position he played. And that's what I was saying even in one of my other videos, when Rhule grabs you and these coaches grab you and have you now switch over and play cornerback or play on the defense, or if you're on the defensive side, he moves you over, plays you on the offense. Even if you do not stay there, it gives you a better understanding of what's going on that side of the ball, which will make you a better player at the position you're at, because you know what that other side is looking for. So you know what you should be looking for or what you should be doing. He got the offer on. He was working out on them one-on-ones, and right on the field, he got called over by Rhule and was offered a scholarship right there on the spot. And after camp, he was able to talk to the coaches, ask questions that he wanted to ask, and then after he got a chance to take a tour of the campus, he decided, to come on the official visit. So I expect Clark to commit probably this weekend. He won't put a date on it yet, but it will be in June. But he's also going to camps at Iowa State, Washington, and I believe Weber State is the other one. Ashton Murphy is one that's coming this last weekend, and he committed back in April. So he's been a commit for a little while. Ashton is 6'5", 242 pounds. He's a defensive lineman, and I expect him to stay at defensive lineman. Defensive lineman is definitely a need. He's right here in our backyard at Elkhorn, Nebraska, and he's rated a 3-star. And again, I know he's rated a 3-star throughout, and it could be right on, don't get me wrong, but you don't get a lot of 4 and definitely 5 stars out of Nebraska. Nebraska's football, they don't see Nebraska football as elite like they do California and Texas and Florida. They feel like, yes, this player's good, but what kind of competition is he going in? So, but there's a lot of potential with Ashton, and I feel like he's going to do probably better, mainly when he gets in here and puts some more size. He's pretty quick for his size, and that's kind of what you need. He's just at that right height, 6'5", that's kind of pushing there on the defensive line. You don't want him too tall, but I feel like he's probably better than most people think, but 3 is probably right there, right where he's at. And Ashton Murphy is a big one, and not in his rankings, but just in his position, as defensive line is a position of need. So this is a big get for the Huskers, especially after losing out on some key linemen targets to Michigan and Tennessee earlier in the year. It was important for Nebraska to grab someone, and Murphy's commitment was a big deal, especially being in-state. I think you could grab all the in-state players you can. You need to do that. Ashton was one of those that came last year and did a state tour. He kind of did a state tour, and we knew last year the potential he had. He's always had that great frame, that size, and he's really, like I said, athletic and quick for such a big guy. And his work ethic is at a high level too. He's a very high level prospect. Murphy flashed as a track athlete. And think about that, a track athlete. He's a shot putter. He shot put, I think, 55, over 55 foot. I think it was 55.7 as a sophomore in high school. And I think that was his first ever year doing that. So he's got great strength. He's going to do nothing but grow. He was actually projected to be an offensive tackle by a lot of the other schools. Northern Iowa was one of the first to offer him as a offensive lineman. The Huskers see him developing more into a true three-man, which would probably get him on the field quicker, and which is a need, but he will easily be able to play probably around 280 pounds someday. He's, like I said, he's at 240. That's just another 30 or 40 pounds, which is going to be easy. It's probably going to be bulk and muscle. This is a nice recruiting win for Rhule and the Huskers, because both Colorado and Iowa State were after this young man. He also camped at Iowa last summer too when he was making his tour. And you have to think the Hawkeyes were close to offering him. And I think we have seen over the years, Iowa might not be the biggest offensive team, but they seem to have a pretty stout defense every year, so they know how to recruit defensive players. The next player who's already committed as well is Neil Smith, the great Neil Smith that played on the defensive line back in the 80s for Nebraska. His son, Keelan Smith, he's considered an athlete. But to me, almost all these players are athletes when it comes to Rhule and his staff. Yeah, there's some obvious size and athleticism to some of these players that you know probably where they're at's where they'll stay. But for the most part, don't count on all these players being where they're at, where they're coming in. So I almost consider all of them athletes. But Keelan is definitely a true athlete, 6'3", 200 pounds, great speed, great size. I could see him, I rarely see him playing on the defensive side of the ball. He's a overall three-star athlete, and all the sites On3, 247, ESPN, and Rivals. His other school he was looking at was Missouri, and ultimately it was his decision. Neil made the remark, he loved him coming to Nebraska, but it was really up to him. And he made that commitment early May. Keelan's another recruit that is coming this weekend for this recruiting weekend who's already committed. And the good thing about Keelan is he's bringing some Liberty North teammates with him to this official visit. And that's a good sign that he's helping out, trying to push Nebraska into some of these other players. That's always a good sign when you get these recruits who's committed that start recruiting for you. Because as you know, there's no guarantee, even though they've given you a verbal, they're going to stay or actually sign on the dotted line come December. But it's always a good sign when you see them recruiting for you. Now, like I said, Keelan is an athlete, and he could play either on the offense or defensive side of the ball. Smith would argue that he is a better offensive player, but I know Rhule and staff will put him in a good situation and play him where he's probably fit best. It also depends on what his strength and conditioning, what comes out of that, and how big he gets. I could even see him playing wide receiver as a big wide receiver, or even growing into that tight end, or even that hybrid position that you see that Bonner has now grown into. But he made the remark he'll play wherever the coach is and the team needs him to play, and that's a good sign. Rhule's already stated and his staff's already stated, even though they suggest this is where you need to play, or this is where I think you're a better fit, this will probably help you get further along in your career and maybe potentially in the NFL. He doesn't make anyone switch positions that does not want to. Keelan will graduate in December, and so he is going to enroll early in January 24, and that's going to be a big plus for him. So he'll be able to go through that winter conditioning, go through next year's spring practices, play in that spring game, and he'll have an edge up on a lot of the other recruits that will not get here until next summer. The next recruit that's coming in this weekend is another committed back at the end of April, a Texas guy, tight end Ian Flint out of Katy, Texas, 6'5", around 250 pounds. He is a 4-star. He's considered a 4-star by rivals, and then he's a 3-star by the other 3, giving him a 3-star overall ranking. And again, he comes from a real good school and a good area. That's in the Houston area. So I would put them rankings probably more right on. Ian committed, like I said, Ian committed back in April, and he committed over teams like Purdue, Kansas, and Houston. Flint is considered 534th overall prospect and the number 29th tight end of the 2024 cycle. He, like I said, he's 6'5", just under 250 pounds. He's visited Lincoln multiple times, so probably going to be here to help out recruit some of these other players that are coming in that have not pulled the trigger yet. I do expect Ian Flint probably stay where he's at. He could easily get to the point where he could move to the defensive side, but I think he is probably where he's at as a tight end. That's probably where it fits him better. Coach Wager made it clear that his tight ends were going to be blocking tight ends, and guys that are good at blocking end up with the ball at some point. And that kind of sparked Flint. He really kind of liked that. He even kind of made the remark that the coach told him that he controlled his own fate, controlled seeing the field depending on what he does. You could come in here and, trust me, block well. As long as you're turning the ball over, can make some of them catches, you're going to get on the field, especially if you have that blocking ability. That is how it's going to be on a lot of these positions, but it's how it works at the program. And that he said it even how it works at the program he's even currently at the high school level. The next recruit coming in this weekend, he's also a hard committed around the same time as Ian Flint. And he's kind of in the same area, or at least the same city, around the same city, which is Houston. He's from Klein High School, which is around Spring, Texas, which is north of Houston. It's a suburb of Houston, where Ian Flint was from Katy, which is west of Houston. But Gibson Pyle is an offensive lineman, 6'5", just under 6'5", 275 pounds. He's considered a 3-star across the board at all 4 sites, so he's a 3-star overall. Pyle chose Nebraska after visiting the Huskers multiple times, and I think his last visit was on that big March 25th recruiting visit. And I actually thought he would probably commit at that time, but it was not long right after. It was early April when he committed, so it wasn't long after then. But he's coming in this weekend. Again, he's already committed. This is his official visit. And again, great to have some of these hard commits coming in. That way they could kind of recruit some of these players that's coming in that has not pulled that trigger and made a decision. Pyle's considered 697th overall prospect and the 48th interior offensive lineman of the 24 cycle. And this is according to On3's overall ranking. Now, the Huskers have been checking in with Gibson throughout this process, even after he's committed, and Rhule and them do that no matter if they committed or not. And that's the smart thing to do. You do not want to get someone feel like they're left out, because even though a lot of these players might commit and have a hard commit, all schools know this is not a guarantee until they sign on the dotted line. He also said he's connected with a number of the other recruits that are coming in this weekend, like Grant Bricks, and he's got a good relationship with them. So he's got a good relationship with a lot of these guys, and that's always a good sign. So when they get in here, and that makes these other recruits feel comfortable, which will give them, you got to remember, they're moving away from family. They haven't been away from their family a lot. They're young kids. They've been in high school. They're just coming out of high school. So we got to kind of remember that. So when they built these relationships up, a lot of times that could be the deciding factor as well. You might not realize it, feeling comfortable with some of the players they've built a relationship with. The next one on the list, to me, this young man is a lot better than I think his ranking shows. He's a running back, 6 foot, 190 pounds, great vision, great quickness, and he's got real good strength for his size. So what's he going to be like when he comes in there and gets strength and conditioning? He's probably going to bulk up to 210. He's going to be a good sized back, probably even pick up some more speed. So I feel like he's going to do a lot better than a lot of the sites have him. They have him ranked as a 3-star. They have him 3-star all the way through all these rankings, so his overall is a 3-star. He's, like I said, he's out of Lancaster. He's considered the 544th player in the nation and only the 41st running back in the nation. But I feel like he's a lot better than this, and I think he's going to show it. Right now, he's leaning more towards Ole Miss. I think he wants to play in the SEC, and I feel like the Rebels is probably where he's going to be headed. Would be nice, Nebraska in him. They haven't got that running back recruit. They haven't got that commit from that running back. Nathaniel Frazier out of California. He loved it here when he was back here in March. He even said he was going to come back and even give official visit, but we haven't heard much from him since that March 25th, and I feel like he's probably going to commit to Alabama. So I feel like Lacey's probably going to end up going to Ole Miss, but you never know. We get him in here, get him talking to some of the other recruits, some of the others that's already committed, gets talking to Rhule. I don't put by anything. You never know. A lot could happen between now and December. But this young man is a lot better than a lot of people think. He's being looked at by a lot of schools, not just Ole Miss. TCU's looking at him, Arizona State, and even down there in Miami. He went there and they showed him a little love there, down there. He said plenty about why he needed to consider, gave him a lot of reasons why he should consider the Hurricanes on his visit down there back in April. Lacey is very interested in the Hurricanes, so they're not out of the picture. The Hurricanes are amongst his top 6 schools, as well as Nebraska and Baylor and Ole Miss, as well as TCU. I'd give Nebraska maybe 1 in 5, a 1 in 5 chance if you're a betting person. But I think a lot of these recruits are seeing what Rhule's done. A lot of them probably have researched and looked what Rhule has done at Baylor and at Temple, and I think they're starting to feel, yes, I think this guy could turn it around. But again, a lot of them, especially when you get to the better players, a lot of them might want to see it before they do it. So to me, that's what hurts Nebraska right now, is just that winning and losing the last few years. If Nebraska can definitely do better this year, make a bowl game, and it would help the 2024, don't get me wrong, because you don't sign until December or February. So if he comes in here and makes a splash, especially if Rhule could come in here and upset a team that he has no reason upsetting, and to be the only one on the schedule that, to me, he could upset, that you could say he has no reason to be winning that game. The only one I could see is the Michigan game. That's a big stretch. I don't think that's going to happen. Wouldn't surprise me if he did. But any of the other games, if he won that game, yes, it could be an upset. Yes, maybe Nebraska wasn't favored, but it wouldn't surprise me. The one thing Nebraska has been the last 2 or 3 years, or even more, 3 or 4 years, even though they've went 4-8, 3-9, whatever it was, they've been in all them games. They were 1 scores from winning. They would have some of these teams on the ropes late in the 4th quarter, would have a double-digit lead in the 4th quarter, and next thing you know, would blow it. They just couldn't get over that hump. They actually had Michigan on the ropes a couple of years ago, had a tie game with the ball last couple minutes, and that's when they stripped the ball out of Casey Thompson's hand, end up kicking the field goal and winning it. So Nebraska's not as far as you think there, just because you can't just go by their record. There's a difference in a 3-9, 4-8 team that's just gotten their butts whipped, and a 3-9, 4-8 team has lost every game by 7 points or less. So I think they will do better. So that's going to mean a lot. I could see some of these players maybe making a commitment. Maybe they want to do that. Maybe they want to see what's going to happen and then pull the trigger as the season goes on. Wouldn't surprise me if Rhule comes out the gate swinging. If he happens to maybe pull off that upset against Michigan. That's a big stretch, but let's say it did happen. I could see then the Huskers grabbing some of these players you might not expect them to get. But again, that's a long shot, but winning is definitely a key. The next one that's coming in this weekend, again, is another wide receiver. He's a quick wide receiver. He's more of a slot guy. To me, he's more like Kemp is. He's not very tall. He's about 5'8", maybe a little under 5'8", about 145, 150 pounds, but very quick, very agile. He's going to probably be a great punt returner. He's one of those, like I said, like Kemp would be. Like, as soon as you get the ball in his hands, look out. And he's going to be better than you think. Remember, Kemp wasn't a very top-rated recruit coming out of high school. And a lot of it has to do with their size. When they put these stars together, it's not just their athletic ability. It's also their size. It's a lot of things. Their intelligence, their football IQ, everything is all mixed together. Ernest Campbell is considered a 3-star overall by On3's overall ranking, the 418th national player, and the 72nd wide receiver. He's considered a 4-star by On3 themselves and Rivals.com, but 247 ESPN have him as a 3-star. He's right at that verge, at that 3 or 4. Now, there's a lot of schools that's on his tail right now. Texas A&M probably has the edge. TCU's kind of going after him, as well as Nebraska and Baylor. He has not pulled the trigger yet, so you never know. He's coming in this weekend with some of these players that are already committed. Daniel Kalin's here, so he'll have his quarterback. So I could see this young man switching over, but right now I'd probably give the edge to Texas A&M. Our next recruit coming in this weekend, he's a hard commit. He was our first commit of the 24 season of the recruiting class, and that was Roger Gradney out of Altair, Texas, down there in over there probably close to A&M land, to be honest with you. He's been committed the longest of all these recruits. He's coming in. He's 6 foot, 200 pounds. He's a 4-star recruit. He's considered a 4-star overall, 265th overall player, 23rd safety in the nation by On3's overall rankings. Both On3 and 247 have him as a 4-star themselves, with ESPN and Rivals having him at a high 3-star level. But this young man is very quick, very fast. He's definitely probably going to be hanging in. He could end up staying in the secondary, but I could see him also coming in and becoming that hybrid player that you see, that coming down playing linebacker, or that hybrid position. And I feel like he's going to grow into this position. Once he get into this weight and conditioning, I really see him doing, kind of building into that, probably building up to 220, 230, and moving over to the linebacker. Could even maybe even move to edge, but I see him playing more of that secondary hybrid position, where that linebacker where he could cover as well. But the one thing I do know about Gradney is he's very fast and very quick. So if he builds up with the size he has and hangs on to that, he could grow into that kind of that Micah Parsons kind of player. Not saying he's Micah Parsons, but that's what makes Parsons so good, is his quickness. And that's what I see with Gradney. He runs a 10.88 in 100-yard and a 22.4 in the 200. We could get a little more size on him and all that. I kind of like him in that hybrid position, but I could actually see him coming down. I think, man, if he gets maybe 230 and all that and keeps that quickness, what kind of edge player would he be? He'd just be a dominating edge player. Like I said, what do you think has made Micah Parsons so good? That motor of his and that speed, no one could keep. The problem is them offensive linemen can't keep up with him. He's too quick for him. So I kind of see him in that mold. I could see him coming down to that and working into that. I think you're going to start seeing that more. I think Parsons showed once he got into the NFL what someone could do with that kind of speed and athleticism with that size. So I kind of might see this happening a little more now in the college ranks, definitely with Rhule. So keep an eye on Gradney, as I could see him growing into that spot. The next one coming in this weekend, and to me this is a big one right here, is the number one player in Iowa, Grant Brix, the number one offensive lineman, 6'6", 277. That's probably right at the top of Rhule's height limit. Frost really liked him. Tall offensive lineman, 6'9", 6'10", but I think we saw the struggles of the offensive line, and that's a lot of it when they're that big, that tall, when you need to get down, and then you got smaller, quicker defensive linemen. So I think 6'6" is probably the top you're going to see, but Brix is a top offensive lineman. He's being recruited by Kansas State, Iowa State, Oklahoma's even in the mix. He is a 4-star, and he's the 83rd player in the nation, and that's saying a lot when you're an offensive lineman. He's out of Logan, Iowa, probably leaning Kansas State, but my prediction, I feel like this is one Nebraska will get. Brix has got some pretty good offers. He's got offers from Oregon, Notre Dame, as well as Ole Miss. And he's already taken a couple official visits. And so just that he's coming here on the 23rd, has not made that commitment yet. I feel like Nebraska's got a good shot once he gets here. But keep in mind that Kansas State was the very first one that ever offered him a scholarship, and he's got a real good relationship with the Coach Riley down there, and so that might probably does give them a little edge. Now the next one that's coming in, as I think everybody knows, he's been committed for about a month now, and that's Daniel Kalin, quarterback Daniel Kalin out of Bellevue West, Nebraska. Considered a 3-star overall, 3-star by all the rankings. To me, he's a 4-star quarterback. I think he proved that in the Elite 11 competition. He actually even met and was one of the Elite 11 finalists, yet they still have him ranked as a 3-star. That's one where I feel like these next ones that you're about to hear is not getting the respect they're getting because they play in Nebraska. Nebraska just here lately in the last 10 years or so, their football play has been growing and producing higher level players, but it just hasn't earned the respect like out there in California, Texas, and Florida. I think a lot of these sites, when they see them play, it's not that they're questioning the player themselves more than the competition they're playing against. I think Daniel Kalin proved that when he went out there to that Elite 11, but yet they still have him as a 3-star quarterback. He's 6'3", 200 pounds. Been looking at these quarterbacks for 30-plus years. Met the kid last year. His IQ is just off the charts. He has the smartest football IQ I've seen, and I've seen a lot of them in 30, 40 years. And so I've been saying this. If you watch my video when Kalin committed, and I even produced a video where it said Kalin's a lot better than most think, and I think he proved that when he went to Elite 11. And I think you're going to be surprised when he gets here. And I've been getting a lot of flack from a lot of people sending messages just thinking I'm just trying to be a homer. I always said Kalin was one of the top quarterbacks. He was my second pick as a quarterback, but I thought he was the next best one. But when we were trying to get Dylan Raiola, Dylan is the real deal. Dylan's way above everybody, not just Daniel Kalin. But Daniel Kalin, I think, IQ-wise, football IQ is a lot better. And that, trust me, when it comes to quarterback, that's a lot of it. Two big recruiting commitments that came out. Kalin's teammates from Bellevue West, Isaiah McMorris and Devon Hall. Both of them are wide receivers. They're kind of different style wide receivers. Devon Hall is a tall, lengthy kid that is a high jumper, can go up and get the best of them. So they kind of mix together well. Isaiah McMorris and Devon Hall have been playing together in high school for a while, have great chemistry, a great relationship, and now this could grow in college. So that's a big deal. People don't realize that's going to be a big deal and is probably going to help these three shine more, feeling together, that commitment together, knowing what the other one's going to do, where they're going to be. I guarantee you Daniel's got it down where Hall's going to be or where McMorris is going to be when he's back there. Like I said, Daniel, one of the smartest football IQs I've seen. So I think all this is going to blend together, and I think you're going to see this is going to be a lot better for the Huskers than you think. Now, McMorris and Hall is considered a 4-star wide receiver, where McMorris is considered a 3-star wide receiver. And again, a lot of this has to do with where they play at here in Nebraska, and it's not a mark on the player themselves more than they feel competition. It's hard to get a judgment on these players. But I think Daniel Kalin proved by becoming a final of the Elite 11, one of the finalists Elite 11, that the players here are probably a little better. When you get some of these top players, they're a little better than they're probably being ranked just because of how hard it is for them to judge them. And I think when you see these three play again in their senior year, as they go into their senior year, that's probably where you'll see Daniel Kalin maybe earn that 4-star. But no matter what star they are, I'm excited to see these three coming together. So